Has anyone ever told you that you look like Jeff Bezos?
That's one side.
NovaCorp Aerospace is pioneering the integration of sports, entertainment, and hospitality in space. This is like some Elon Musk shit, honestly.
And it will have its own accommodations, and you'll be able to go up there and you'll be able to enjoy a production or a fight or a sporting event or a concert.
On the space station.
Space station, yeah.
This is for real.
Yeah, this is for real. This is all we do. Yeah.
This is some groundbreaking stuff.
Now you see, like, there's a company called Voyager Space that we work with. 2 or 3 years ago, they signed a deal with Hilton for they're building their new space station.
Hilton Hotel?
Yeah, they're building a new space station, and Hilton is going to be the hospitality partner of their space station. So companies like this are already looking forward to this.
Is it true you introduced Dana White to UFC? Happier with age?
There are things that I had done in my past, positive things, but decisions I made. I'll give you one that I haven't told anybody yet. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time and coming to Saudi Arabia, 16-hour flight from Los Angeles. I'm going to tell myself that you did it for me, whether you did or not. It'll help me sleep better tonight. With someone who has, influence and touch points in so many different industries, from sports to entertainment, aerospace, to name a few, how on earth do you make it all work?
At an altitude of 37,000 feet, we soar, with a rich legacy of honoring our guests and a unique style that has resonated with the world for 78 years. We carry the name of our country on every journey and across every sky. We are Saudi. We welcome you in our own way. We shape our present and build our future. Saudia, our name and country, our style and approach, striving for excellence in everything we do. This is how we fly.
First of all, thanks for having me. Second of all, you are a huge part of why I scheduled it at this time to be on your show with you. So thank you for having me. It means a lot.
My pleasure.
It's all been a long transition. That step one didn't necessarily tell me where I was going to end up. Every piece led to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And it just materialized over the many years. It started off a long time ago, where I was born and raised in Hawaii. And at an early age, I was a professional dancer at the time, and I had an opportunity to come to the U.S., I think that was an island. I had island fever, right?
Honolulu or Maui?
Yeah,
Honolulu?
Yeah, I lived in Maui as well, too. But yeah, Honolulu, probably. And I got on the plane, left my family, came out, and from then on, I never looked back. And one thing led to the next thing, to the next thing. But it all makes sense in the story that we'll get through.
Amazing. Do you ever feel like it's too much? I mean, you hear aerospace, you hear entrepreneur, you hear businesses. We're going to get into the media, the work that you do in media and TV. Have you ever told yourself, John, maybe I should slow down a little, or is that not in your encyclopedia?
It's not in my encyclopedia. And it's not like everything that I do doesn't tie into the other. So one thing that I'm very serious about is I don't like to take on too many random things that have their own path of working really hard to get to. Everything kind of leads to the next. And as you know, when you learn more about what I'm doing in aerospace and things of this nature, you're going to find that it all ties into my film and television history, my background, and the story of how I even got to the aerospace industry was one that just kind of happened. So it all ties in together. So to answer your question, if I was doing too many unique things that didn't have the path that made sense, didn't coincide, then it could be too much. But everything that I do just feeds the other thing, and it's been why I've been able to move so well in the business
So one thing led to another in some respect.
from the beginning. From the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny how when we live it and we go through it, do we connect the dots and see that it all made sense? Maybe it didn't at the time. Now you look back, you're like, yeah, it all happened for a reasons.
And there was times when I was like, man, am I being a jack of all trades, master of none? Because I've always been a entertainment-based person that always wanted to be achieving something new at all the time. And I would get bored in the beginning. I'd have a goal, I'd reach that goal, and where a lot of people would just stay in that goal for the rest of their lives, I would be like, oh, I did this, I want to do something different, And it was fun. When you're younger, you have more time on your hands, and you find that this is fine. As you get older, you start going, okay, But then it turns out at the end, when it all came back around by the end, it's like, oh, all that happened for a reason, because all of those things that I did in the beginning now are all involved in what I'm doing now. And if I hadn't done those things, I wouldn't be as good as what I'm doing today. So
when it comes to leadership style, do you have a specific way in managing your teams?
Yeah, I'm a product of the art of war. I'm a product of fighting and martial arts and all of this. And I believe very much, probably for many, many years as teaching martial arts, is to lead by example. So when I say war, I think about like a good general. And a good general is someone who not can only motivate his team to do something great, but he's the first one into battle. And he's willing to die for his people. And they follow him into battle. He doesn't just send him into battle and watch from the sidelines, So I'm always the first guy in and the last guy out. And when I give that heart and that soul with a clear vision, I find that my team follows me in, And at the same time, I would also die for them as well, So a big part of what I think is really important as a leader is to be willing to put yourself out there first and lead. And that's my plan. And from the very beginning, it's always been, in everything that I've done, it's always been me on the path first, and then the team just slowly adds on and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But it's always me leading, being the first one into battle and the last one out.
That's the best advice ever, leading by example. I mean, you can tell people until the cows come home, but as if you're not out there in the field, in battle, practicing what you preach, I don't think words mean much.
Yeah, and people see through that. Yeah, first, you can pitch your idea, you can give them your vision, and it sounds exciting, but if they don't see you living it and they see you giving everything that you have towards that vision, then it's hard to get them to want to do the same, But if you can really lead and you can show them, then they follow easier and they get involved and everyone gets motivated. And as a martial artist, you see the same thing. You're a teacher, you have students, they come in as white belts, they look up to you, they pattern themselves around you. I've seen amazing teachers that have amazing students, and I mean amazing as in respectful, everything you think you should get out of martial arts, And then I've seen teachers who are, cheating to win competitions, and you really see it in their people. Their whole team under them is the same, because this is how they learned, and they think it's okay. So it's very, very important to lead by example and to lead the right way.
Absolutely, well said. I want to get into NovaCorp. I think is probably where you spend most of your time today. NovaCorp Aerospace is pioneering the integration of sports. It's very interesting, this sports, entertainment, and hospitality in space. This is like some Elon Musk shit, honestly. It's like if you were to say, Mo, go dream of something that you'd love to see a reality in 5-10 years, I'd think of that. Talk to me about your vision and how you perhaps see it transforming or transferring from what we know entertainment to be today to aerospace or space entertainment. This is a whole new field that I'd love to hear your view on.
Well, let's start off by talking about Elon Musk. His vision is to make humanity a multi-planetary species, right? Literally, like taking hundreds of people at a time in a starship to Mars on a one-way trip, right? And I really, early on I realized, this is not going to be a bunch of astronauts that train their whole life to do this. This is going to be real people. There's hundreds at a time on multiple starships being built. So it's real people with real experiences. And there's things now you see, like there's a company called Voyager Space that we work with. They 2 or 3 years ago they signed a deal with Hilton for they're building their new space station.
Hilton Hotel?
Yeah, they're building a new space station, and Hilton is going to be the hospitality partner
wow.
of their space station. So companies like this are already looking forward to this. We have our own product we'll get into later, but basically in 2030, 2031, you're going to see multiple space stations built for different purposes, not all like the ISS was built, and they're a lot bigger and getting bigger and bigger. So what I see us as is the bridge between what the normal person thinks of space as some science fiction movie that's above their head and humanity, and bridging that gap by bringing things that we already love and do on a day-to-day basis to space. And there will come a time, and I don't mean in 20 years, I mean in 5 years, 6 years, where you will actually be able to go to a space station. You'll be choosing, do I want to go on a cruise for a week, or do I want to go to space for a week, if you have the money, right? And you may choose to go to space for a week. And when you're up there, you're like, okay, I've looked at the Earth through the window for a few days. It's cool. But honestly, why don't we go over and watch a Beyonce concert at the other space station, I would say up the street, but a couple stars away, right? And this is what we are. We're going to be bringing entertainment and television, sports to space. But in the intern, we're going to be doing it with rockets, and I can't get too much into our partners, but it would be the big ones you could think about, and it will be done on a rocket. But eventually, we have our own space station called the NovaStar, which is in development, which will be an actual venue, the first. I say sound stage versus arena in space, and it will have its own accommodations, and you'll be able to go up there and you'll be able to enjoy a production or a fight or a sporting event or a concert
On the space station?
On the space station, yeah.
This is for real?
Yeah, this is for real. This is all we do, yeah.
This is some groundbreaking stuff.
It is.
And you're saying 5 years from now is when this could be a reality?
Well, right now, if you look, you're already going to see many companies from Blue Origin. They had their orbital reef they were working on, just a very unique-looking space station, which is, hospitality base, much bigger than the norm. And part of the reason why is because in the old days, basically the rocket, whatever rocket is being made at this time, which are very small internally, or why the space station, the ISS, was so small. If you've ever seen videos of it on the inside, it's little corridors, right?
Yeah.
This is simply because it has to be taken up there by a rocket. So if the rockets are small, then you can only put so much inside of the rocket, and you got to take a lot of flights back and forth and build and build and build, and it takes time, it takes money. The Starship, to give you an example, from Elon Musk's Starship that he's developing, that you've been seeing in testing, has 7 floors of empty space inside of it, and a massive, massive space. So you can put huge pieces, if not intact pieces of a space station, up there and drop them off, which makes it much, much easier. So the new space stations that you're going to see are going to be more like what you've always imagined in sci-fi a space station would look like. And it's simply because the rockets that are being built are bigger these days, which means you can put bigger pieces inside of them, which means you can make bigger space stations. So, and there's multiple companies currently building space stations, Axiom, Voyager, our company, NovaCorp, like I say, Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' company. And even SpaceX is talking about using their Starship and maybe leaving one of them up there, which is huge because it would just float there, right, to be a space station. So yeah, this is something that's going to be happening very soon. They're already in development. People have been financed already. Financing's coming in for a lot of the companies as well. And 2030, you're going to see things, if not finished, almost finished, including the brand new ISS, because the old one's being decommissioned.
This is a big, major turning point for humanity.
Yeah, it is.
It was cool to put a guy on the moon in '69.
Right.
But this is one for the history books. Space tourism, fascinating.
It is. It's a whole nother part of the space industry, and like I say, it's the part that's going to make the normal human, be able to wrap their head around space. Right now, it sounds like a cool thing, but it's just too much for a lot of people to understand. But as they really start paying attention right now, this is stuff that's happening right now. It's nothing. We're not talking about 20 years from now. We're talking about.
That's the crazy part.
Currently.
You're saying 5 years from now.
Currently, yeah.
Affordability, super expensive. Like how do we have any idea how much it could cost someone per night on board?
I don't think it'd be done by the night like this. It's done more by the mission, because the money comes in the actual rocket and rocket fuel and getting you there. Once you're there, of course, you can't stay forever because it affects your body at some points. And of course, there's, this oxygen and everything else to set up for that situation. But it's really getting there. So the key, once again, even the credit to SpaceX and Elon Musk, is this re-landing of the rockets. Imagine if you had a plane, and every time we got on a plane to fly someplace, they had to throw the plane away when we got there. Imagine how much that plane would cost, because they'd have to build a brand new one every time we fly from LA to Saudi Arabia, right? Well, now our planes get cheaper and cheaper because people fly and fly back and get a lot of use out of them. So these starships, the Dragon, the Falcon, they have all of these ones. They're taking off and they're landing again. They're reusable, and they're making many of them. So it's going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper in the same way that airlines are cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, because other companies will develop. SpaceX is way ahead of the game, but reusable aircrafts are the key to more affordable flights.
الآن ليس الجديد الأفضل على الإطلاق، نكهة قوية، كرمشة مثالية.
Fascinating. The next big thing for sure. Not enough people are talking about this.
No, not yet. But there will be. There will be. I mean, once the Starship is operational, which hopefully a few years from now, it'll be first human missions. And you're seeing it take off and and they're talking about putting people inside of it. I mean, the Starship's plan on being able to move 100 people at a time. And to give you an idea, what that means is the Dragon, which is one of SpaceX's rockets, is you can make 6 work, but 4 people to 6 people are inside of that, and that's it. And it's pretty much, you're compact in there. So when I'm saying 100, I don't mean packed. I mean 100 with space to workout areas, to float around. Like I said, 7 floors of empty space. So at this point, things are going to change.
Yeah, we have this vision, I think, from movies that corridors are super tight, and you can't really navigate your way through it. It's a real game changer. This in so many ways.
It is. The company we're working with right now, one of the companies that we're looking at is Gravitics, and they came up with a really cool idea. They built a module, because everything's done modularly. So basically, a module goes up there, and they can be attached one to the next to the next. So this is why you can see those space stations in the future that are just huge, because they're modular. You just keep attaching, and they get bigger, and they get bigger, and they get bigger. And over the years, you're going to see those massive crafts you've seen in old space science fiction movies. Well, this company was smart enough to build a module that fits exactly into the size of the Starship intact, which is really interesting, because you can then build it here on Earth internally, what you want inside of it, everything here, right here on the ground, put it in the Starship, take it up, and just drop it off. And it's there. First module's done, right? Whereas before, you take, some of the plating in a small rocket, and you have to put it together in space in that situation, which you can imagine the complexity of this. So this is part of the difference, is the size of rockets changes everything, Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you can share with me that you faced so far in this venture?
That was part of it. The first thing was knowing that we wanted to have space, meaning not space, but space with internal space to do something like a mixed martial art event in space in zero gravity, which is one of our shows, or the first concert in space, or weddings in space. We have some great TV series tied to our missions. Genesis X mission is what we're doing. And it was like, well, all these little modules, you couldn't really do anything inside of them, right? And then not only within them, but you'd have to have production space outside of it, right? And talking about this. So when the only rocket, the only company that's even capable of doing something like this would be SpaceX, because they have a big enough rocket and a big enough dimension. So when that happened, it was like, oh, this is the idea, And then when I found these other companies, like for the space stations I'm talking about, based on the dimension, it became more of a reality because we actually had the capacity that we needed to build something inside that could actually be done great. You know, we have an amazing design for, you know, what the UFC would call an octagon, but for us it's a sphere, and it is a circle, you know, circle with cameras throughout the whole thing, 360. So you could sit there with an Oculus on or a Vision Pro, and you could sit in the middle of the fight, how it's being shot, and you can just watch it happening all around you. You know, and so it's padded walls throughout the whole thing. A great setup. But it's really just, that was the problem. The problem at first was like, man, we have this idea, but there's only so many people, like 2, that you could even have the dimension to do what you want to do. But we figured it out.
What role do you think Saudi can play when it comes to space exploration, entertainment?
Yeah.
You know, you see how much we are investing in entertainment. Does Saudi fit into your plans in any way?
Saudi is prime part of my plan. First of all, our space station should be done, or at least close to it, 2031. But we plan to be on our first mission, the Genesis X mission, rocket-based in the next 2.5 years, 2 years from now, because the first things that we're going to be doing will be happening inside of a rocket in orbit. Yeah. So we don't need to be in a space station for this. The space station is the longer plan to be able to do it and own our own facility. But, you know, I've always thought about this region, and especially during the 2030 project. You know, I spent 25 years in hotels and nightlife and hospitality in Vegas way back in another life. And when I think about the Middle East in general, whether it's UAE, Saudi Arabia, I always think of the larger than life. You know, you have Las Vegas, which is incredibly impressive, but then you got Dubai, right? You got boxing, you know, as we know it, and then you have Turkey Al-Sheikh doing amazing things out here with the PIF and with, you know, the whole plan with the MBS's plan. So I always think something like this, to me, is prime for Saudi Arabia. And I'll tell you also why. The game of building rockets and all of these kind of things, I mean, are dominated by U.S. industries primarily. Of course, there's some China stuff and there's some Russia stuff, but U.S. is far ahead between Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, and obviously Elon Musk and Sierra Nevada and so many different companies. It's going to be hard to say, well, we're going to develop a rocket that's going to compete with that. I don't think that's the game. I think the game for Saudi Arabia is to develop this market that I'm talking about, this hospitality market, this entertainment market, because this is something that the money in the United States that's being used for rockets and hardware in this way, they can't afford to play this game. In the same way, they can't afford to play the game of entertainment that Saudi Arabia is playing. So if I was here listening to this podcast or just reading about this concept of hospitality, entertainment, I would really take it seriously, because this is something that not many people can play this game. And it is in the game of what the kingdom is doing. And like you said earlier, it's historical. This is historical. This is the first this, the first that. This is historical. This is you know, the first man on the moon. Who did it? What country did it? You know, and that's why I think that this is a primary. And this is part of why I want to come here. It's not money, taking money out of here. I'm going to come here and I'm going to build something that is Saudi Arabian, that's based here, that has satellite offices elsewhere. But this is the home base, because I believe this is where the game can be played properly when people understand what I'm doing.
There's a bit of a crossroads that I'm picking up on you and what's happening in the aerospace world right now. Turning point, historical. People are going to be talking about this 40, 50, 100 years from now, no doubt. Yeah. And what Saudi's doing. The whole, okay, we saw what Dubai did. We saw what maybe Egypt did before then. And now it's our turn to dance. So there's a bit of a collision course, and I mean it in a very good way, where Saudi is, you know, kind of like Hulk, you know, ripping off his T-shirt, and you guys going on this historic journey, where I do see a lot of synergies between the two touch points, let's say.
You know, and me having such a background in film and television, producing many films, I produce 3 to 4 films a year with my other company. And everything based on this, in my history, you know, former MMA champion, own my own shows. I was in this industry for a long time, managed the best fighters and trained the best fighters in the world, from Chuck Liddell to Randy Couture to Tito Ortiz to BJ Penn to the big names of the UFC.
Huge.
We talked about earlier. You said all of these different things that you've done.
Yeah.
Is it too much? But no, because as you're starting to hear what I'm doing in the aerospace industry, you can see how all of these elements now and my expertise in all of these elements all fit into it, and is part of why this crazy idea is here and why we're doing this, because it all makes sense to me. Where it seems crazy to someone else, I can see how all of these dots connect, and they are connecting, and I think this is a part of the puzzle.
جديد. اكسر الروتين مع أطباقنا الجديدة من بيتزا هات جدة. بيتزا هات جدة، ذوق طعم الثقة معنا.
Is it true you introduced Dana White to UFC?
It's a good start. Well, actually, more than that, yeah, because what happened was this story that Dana is very, very generous to tell very often, and so were the Fertittas. The original owners that took over the UFC and made it successful, because I was around when it was, we should talk about that. I was around when we were hiding from hotel to hotel because the police were coming to arrest us that night, so we had to hide in another hotel before they catch us before the next fight. I was around from these days. The first UFC in the US was 93. I started fighting in 94, to give you an idea.
It was underground completely.
It was. They had these first big events that you heard of when Royce Gracie was out there and dominating, which was the introduction of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to mixed martial arts, which is a whole nother thing that flipped the world on its head, because no one knew about this. This little skinny guy was beating all these big old guys. But anyways, long story short, the Fertittas, which are billionaires that own a lot of casinos, a lot of different things in Las Vegas, where I was, and Dana White was a boxing coach with them at the time. And he came up to me in the Hard Rock one night, and he just said, "Hey, my clients, the Fertitta brothers, they want to meet you." Lorenzo Fertitta was on the athletic commission as a chairman, and for boxing. So at that time, he was trying to keep the UFC from coming to Las Vegas because he was a boxing guy and they all were, but there was interest. And I had the only mixed martial arts school, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school in Las Vegas for 5 or 6 years before anybody got hip to it. So Royce Gracie would fight in the UFC and he'd beat up a bunch of people, and I'd come to my school the next day and there'd be a line of people out there because there's nowhere else to go. So by default, I was just dominating that industry. So he brought them to me to, in a Hard Rock to talk to them about training, and we, made some friends. We set up a session to train together, and then we were doing about 3 days a week for about 2 years before the UFC was purchased. It was during this time. And what happened was I just wanted to make the private lessons interesting for them and help them to meet people. So I would bring my friends, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, all these big famous names in the sport, just to kind of, today we'll learn from me and my friend Chuck. And today, and they got to know these people and fell in love with these people. And then that led to me introducing them to the guys from Tap Out and all of these deals. And they started realizing these guys are not just brutes. These guys are really cool people that are, very intelligent people. I mean, Chuck Liddell is as an accounting master's, So, they're smart guys. And this made them fall in love with the sport, which then led to Dana first managing me as just a boxing coach at the time, before the UFC purchase. And then me bringing over Chuck and Tito Ortiz to Dana to manage as well. And then that led to eventually him purchasing the UFC for $2 million and 10 or 20 years later selling it for $4 billion. And now here we are. So my name is synonymous with the UFC kind of coming to fruition, because it was done. And it was through this time that the love was built with Dana and the Fertitta brothers, which kind of led to the purchase of the UFC. Yeah. Lorenzo Fertitta left the commission, went all in on UFC, and here we are today. So
he still owns a bit of it, though, right, Dana?
Yeah, he still does, yeah. Right, because then it was William Morris Endeavor, which is one of the biggest agencies out there and everywhere. But it's California,
that sport just flew off the shelf. It's crazy.
It's still getting bigger in its own way. It's
Do you know how many people stay up till 3, 4 a.m. here watching a Vegas fight?
Well, not really, because over there I'm watching it at 10 p.m. And so over here, you guys are up.
A lot of my cousins, they're up at 3, 4, and they're so they know everyone. I mean, it is young and old. That my 18,
I'm
19.
finding out you guys are up till 5 a.m. here anyways.
So it's not
I'm getting
hard.
tired at 10 p.m. and my partner, Wael, man, he's up until 6 a.m. wide awake. I'm like, oh man, I gotta go to bed, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm getting used to this.
It's become global. Wait, there was a fight in Riyadh, wasn't there? A UFC fight.
There was, yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really global. I mean, just to see. I mean, you know, obviously it's huge in South America and Mexico as well, but it is as global as it gets. What a fascinating sport, really. What a story. Amazing that you were there from the early days.
That's it, yeah. I mean, and like I say, that was the early days of the UFC as we know it today. I was there in the very beginning. And another show called Extreme Fighting, which was it was kind of the one that was living when the UFC was having such problems. And what happened in the very, very beginning, the UFC would promote their own shows as like the blood sport, you know, no rules, because that was their marketing ploy.
Kind of like Fight Club.
Yeah, it's, you know, and what happened was the senators, Senator McCain at the time, the late Senator McCain, he made it a mission of his to end this thing as like one of his campaign things.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
so a lot of these battles, like there's shows I told you about with the Donahue show that I was on and all these shows, it was because they're saying, should this human cockfighting be legal? Should it not be legal? And a lot of it was because they used their own marketing plays against them. Say, hey, you said it was the most violent thing. You said it was this.
Yeah.
You know. So what the UFC did, when I said UFC, I mean what the Fertittas and Zuffa and Dana them did is say, okay, this has a very bad mystique, which is why it was pretty much done. They took it over for $2 million and had to really invest. I mean, they invested $47 million before they started seeing any kind of profit. And they were almost finished, and they just gave it another shot. And this amazing fight happened on TV between Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner. And people were saying, hey, are you seeing this crazy thing on TV right now? And they're calling. By the time it was over, it was millions and millions of viewers. And the next day, it just changed because they saw this one amazing fight. But they were on the verge of saying,
Wow.
we can't do this.
That was the
We can't
bucket
do this.
tipper.
Yeah, but up until then, we literally were I mean, a lot of the things that happened in a sport, for instance, when I was first fighting, there was no gloves, right? And the first UFCs, there were no gloves, no weight divisions, right? No gloves, no weight divisions. So then we'd be in a situation where we train a specific way, one 30-minute round, for instance, one long fight, right? And I trained in a way where I would take the guy down. I'm great in jiu-jitsu, and I have a lot of black belts in different arts, but jiu-jitsu was what I'm most known for. And I take the guy down, I hold him, get him tired, and then make him make a mistake and finish him or whatever. And then in the same night, they go, oh, we got to change to 3 5-minute rounds tomorrow. I'm like, what do you mean, change to 3 minute? I trained a whole specific way. Like, well, this is the only way they're going to let us do it, you know. And then one time it's like, well, we got to wear these new gloves. I'm like, gloves? I mean, you know, they're going to be. And so all of these rules when I was fighting at first, they were just being thrown on us the night before. And then one night they're calling us saying, hey, the police are on their way to pick us up. It's 3 a.m. You know, everybody get in the bus, bring your stuff. We're going to go over to this Indian reservation. And we'd get there and we'd get through the fight, we'd be over. The police would be pulling up. People would be getting put in cars in handcuffs, you know, but this was the beginning. So I was there during this whole transition into the whole Dana White UFC transition and past that until I ended up owning my own show. So this is kind of a really cool time to be in the game, because I saw it from the beginning,
Early days.
to when it's really
Before any regulations.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Were the fights wild back then?
Wild?
Wild, like to the point of unconsciousness?
Well, that happens now. But you know, there's very little rules. No biting, no eye gouging, and no groin strikes were pretty much the rules. And usually these rules came after you did it, and they go, maybe we shouldn't do that. So from the next show on, you know, there's quite a few rules that were named after me. One of my guys, I had him on the ground with my hooks, and he's flat in the stomach, and I'm dropping elbows to the back of his neck, just trying to finish the fight, which I did finish it. Then the next day, they're like, okay, no strike to the back of the neck, because it could be dangerous. But they're figuring it out
As they
off of
call
us guinea pigs, you know. And it happened all along like this. So it was really neat, because rules would be changed for each next fight based on what they figured out from the last time.
Because we've never seen anything like it.
right.
I mean, it's the furthest thing away from boxing or kickboxing even.
Yeah. When I was involved, of course, when the UFC was kind of making that transition after they purchased it, and they really went all out. I mean, a lot of ad buys in magazines at the time, like Maxim and Rolling Stones. They put a lot of money to marketing, and they partnered with like world famous supermodels, and it would have like the champion with a supermodel, and he'd be all glammed up. It was kind of funny actually, but the point was they're trying to change this vision of these gladiators and show them as being interesting, cool people, and they really put a lot of money into that. Then of course the rounds, the gloves, really trying to give it regulation so that the athletic commissions could get behind it. And that's what they did. And it would not have happened, and it wouldn't have went further if it wasn't for the UFC with for Tito Brothers and Dana.
So I did a bit of reading on you. There's something that I came across. The Dirty Dozen, the first 12 Americans to receive a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And you were the third.
Yes.
What was it like, being amongst such company dominated by Brazilians for the longest time? Yeah. How did that feel, being one of the early ones to have such a title?
That's a good story too, because it's called the Dirty Dozen, and it's the first 12 Americans to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which there's millions and millions now. So 3 is pretty significant. And in one of my first fights, I was training at one of the Gracies, who's a jiu-jitsu guy, Hickson Gracie School at the time. And I was offered in that fight, Extreme Fighting, to fight a very famous jiu-jitsu fighter named Carlson Gracie Jr., this son. And at that time, the Gracies were just dominating the business. So people were like, they're unbeatable. Now, keep in mind, I was training there as well as I had black belts from very famous grappling masters in America, like Judo Jim LaBelle and people like this. So I had some understanding. So when I first went to my teacher, which was Hickson, and I asked, hey, I'm being offered to fight for a title against Carlson Gracie Jr., are you cool with it? They almost laughed it off, like, yeah, sure, you're going to get killed, to do this. So I was like, okay, cool. So I did it. And as I was training, I started seeing, oh man, he's kind of, so then they kicked me out of the school. They kicked me out. So then I was floating around from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school to Jiu-Jitsu school, which there weren't Americans doing it because it was Brazilian, which is the point, right? And no one would really take me in, but I just continued to train. I finally had this fight, 30-minute fight. I clearly dominated the fight. Everybody would say I won. The reason, in those days, once again, you could only win by knocking them out, submitting them, or them throwing in the towel. You could beat someone bloody, but if they didn't give up, it's a draw. But clearly, I won that fight. So it changed the whole mystique of the Gracie family and them being beatable. And that was my, if you want to say overnight success, not necessarily tied to money, but tied to people knowing about me. That was it. It was on pay-per-view. People saw it. So at that time, once again, I didn't have any good teachers. And then a friend of mine that I knew from Brazil had another great teacher named Andre Pederneiras in Brazil, and he said, hey, you need to meet Andre because he's a really cool guy, and he might, be willing to work with you and train you and help you get to your black belt level. He brought him to America, and we just hit it off right away. And then I became his student, train, and I got my black belt from him, which is a big deal for him because he was getting yelled at by all the Brazilians, like, why are you teaching Americans? Kind of the story with Bruce Lee in the old days where no one would teach Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee wouldn't teach, they got mad at him for teaching other people the art. It was the same. So, but it's significant, to look back on it now, to be the third. At the time, didn't mean anything, but looking at it back 30 years later, 6-degree black belt, which is a high level of black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a significant achievement that's fun the story's fun.
It's an amazing
It was
achievement.
a wild time when no one wanted to take you in. Yeah.
No, it's an amazing achievement.
Yeah.
If we were to go back further than 30 years, have you ever asked yourself what pulled you into wanting to get into the world of fighting and mixed martial arts?
Yeah, it's because I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, Mililani and Oahu. And fighting is a big culture in Hawaii. And when I say fighting, I don't mean professional. I mean street fighting, you know. And it was a time when you didn't have to worry about getting shot all the time. It was just literally fighting. You'd fight and it would be over and you'd be like, you get a good fight. So I was a mixed. I'm half black, half white. This is my race. And even though I was living in Hawaii and growing up there, people still looked at you as you're not Hawaiian. You're not, Polynesian. So I would still be, So I got in a serious fight with someone very popular, like my 6th grade year, and who ended up being a UFC fighter that I saw him 20 years later. I was like,
no way.
That's Kimo. Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah,
Small world.
What a small world. I didn't see him since then. But anyways, I ended up obviously doing very well in that situation, and I would end up being like the guy that beat up all the bullies. I wouldn't start trouble, but I would always be the front defending people, and I built a reputation for myself. And that was my first taste of like, okay, so if you're really good at something, people like you, people, and so I kind of gravitated towards fighting. And I was about 12 when I first started taking my first martial art. I have black belts in 5 different arts. And I just started appreciating fighting. And I started getting better and better technically. But it wasn't until my early 20s, 21, 22, when I took on my first actual professional fights. But up until then, I was weekly, we're meeting under the bridge on Wednesdays. We were not knowing who you're going to fight, saying, okay, I'll fight you today, And no one would jump in. It wasn't like people were jumping people. We'd fight and we'd be done and we'd be like, a good fight, and that was kind of how I got into fighting. And then when I ended up having an opportunity, a friend of mine named John Peretti, he ended up being a matchmaker for the UFC, and he also was one of the owners of that Extreme Fighting show. He said, hey man, there's this new thing at the time called NovaStar. And he says, this is other guys like you, you're doing all this fighting in your backyard, you're challenging all these people and you're teaching people in your backyard, but you should try to find some other people like yourself who are professionals. And I'm like, oh, sure. It wasn't even about money. To give you an idea, it was like $600 to fight, which the question wasn't even how much. I didn't even care. It was like, oh, I get to fight someone else good. I can really test myself. Because at this time, that's all there was. There wasn't much money in the sport. Right. So I minute and 43 seconds won that fight in the Blaisdell Arena in Hawaii. I got to go back home because I was living in California. So I got to go back home, fight in my own town, and that started me on my trajectory as a professional fighter. And since there was not a lot of big shows at that time, I just shot up the food chain very quickly because there was just a few big shows, and I was just thrown into it. Luckily, I was able to stay afloat and do well.
It's funny, you think of Hawaii, you think of a very peaceful, tranquil, luxurious, laid-back haven.
The kids.
Almost. I didn't know it had a dark side to it.
I wouldn't even say it's a dark side. It's just like, now when you look at fighting and you look at the world, I have a 16-year-old son. Every day I'm afraid when you go to school, I'm like, watch out, stay away, because it's not just the same anymore. I tell my son, sometimes when you win, you lose.
Yeah.
You can beat this kid up, and then he goes home and his friends are like, you let him beat you up, like you let him do that to you. Then he comes back the next day with a knife or a gun. Like it's a whole nother thing. Something probably I don't think you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis here. Mm-hmm. But back home, this isn't a thing. Part of why I want to move my son out here. Yeah. But yeah. So but in Hawaii, it really was just a fight. And you're done. You shake hands, and it was just part of the culture. So warrior culture.
I think it's important to learn how to defend yourself because you're never going to know when you're going to need it. My son's 7, and in school, karate comes in year 7, so he's doing that. Good. But I don't know if karate is it. I think maybe taekwondo, jiu-jitsu. That's maybe when I want to get him into a little bit more.
I would recommend jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
His character needs it. Yeah. He's more on the to himself kind of personality. Yeah. And I'd hate, somebody to one day take his kindness for weakness, and him not being able to do something about it.
Yeah,
How many times did you have to listen? You're not gonna antagonize, but you're gonna defend yourself if somebody throws a punch, and I'm sure you're gonna know exactly what to do with him. How important is it in the world we live in today? You just don't know when the next punch is gonna come and from where.
I think it's incredibly important that parents have their kids in martial arts at a young age. Any martial art as far as building confidence, as far as, because this is something that you exude as you get older, and through the school, and just if you can carry yourself a certain different way, that's half the battle. Because people don't want to pick on people they're going to have a hard time fighting. They want to pick on somebody they can bully around. No one wants to have actually have a hard fight. So any martial art can give you a confidence. Now, practicality is another question, like you said, which art. Every art has something to offer. But why I say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or wrestling is because it's truly a combative sport that when you even practice, you practice full out 100%. And Jiu-Jitsu they consider the gentle art, although it cannot be gentle, but it's not getting on top of someone and punching them in the face. It's submitting them, making them give up. They have a chance to tap out. But when you go against somebody in Jiu-Jitsu, you go 100%, the same way that you would on the street, right? And you try to make them give up, and they try to make you give up. So what that does to you, when you start succeeding, which everybody does as they get better and better and better, you build a genuine self-confidence that you're good. And someone without that kind of experience in the street is literally like playing with a child. It's like really, because if I just said to you, I'm gonna give me 10 minutes with you right now. I'm just gonna give you one move, how to get behind someone and do the choke. You don't even know how to get behind them very well. You just get behind them, whatever you gotta do to get behind them, and do this choke. And then you go against someone else in the street who has no plan. He's just gonna fight you and roll around on the ground, and you have a plan. You're gonna get there, and you're probably gonna win that fight just because you have a plan. Now, jiu-jitsu is like a vocabulary. It's like words that you learn. The more words that you learn, the more articulate you are, the better you can speak. So, and you learn things in jiu-jitsu every day that you can use that same day. So it builds up really quickly, and it builds a real self-confidence, because you can, Taekwondo, or I don't want to talk bad about any art, but you could do Taekwondo or something where you're kind of hitting, but you don't hit full, and they pull their punches, and you're like, yeah, but I wonder what would, even within yourself, you're like, I wonder what would really happen if this really happened. In jiu-jitsu, I went in that day, I got my butt kicked today, or I went in that day and I got that arm bar today, it really worked, and he was trying his best to not let me get it. Now you have something you really believe in, and this builds a confidence. Yeah. So you'll find the better you get in martial arts, whatever that martial art is, the less likely you're going to get in a fight. One, because you don't care, you don't have clothes dirty, there's nothing to prove. It's not, I used to think before, it was, you become a black belt and you're like, well, I'm Zen, I don't fight. It's not that. You literally just don't, it's boring. It's boring. You're like, come on, man. And it's like, you don't care if they say something because you're confident of what could happen. It almost just happens for that reason. So it's interesting. But yeah, I know it's a long answer to your question, but I would absolutely say kids' experience, especially in high school, is drastically different if they have some kind of martial art background. They'll have a much more peaceful high school year.
Damn. I'm just thinking of bullies that pick on the wrong guy. They'll probably never pick on anyone again because you don't know what that person knows or doesn't know.
It's true.
It's like you're an undercover in some degree.
And if you have to have that one fight in school that you try not to have, but you have it, and then you do your thing, everybody else is like,
little roundhouse kick.
And everybody else is like, I don't want to fight that guy. So from then on, it's a lot easier for your son.
Yeah, it puts you in a category.
They're gonna go pick on somebody else because that guy is gonna be. Even if I win against this guy, I'm gonna see with a couple black guys. So
yeah,
it's definitely like my son. He trained from a young age on. It's not his thing, his direction that he wants to be a professional fighter, but he absolutely can take care of himself.
Oh yeah,
and
if for no other reason, just for that.
Yeah, and which means that's one problem he doesn't have to deal with in school.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Builds character.
But it's not that one.
Yeah. When I think of martial arts, the first thing that comes to mind is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
What besides discipline have you carried with you into the business world that you learned from the days of martial arts?
Yeah. No, discipline is the key. It's to get a black belt. Not that the black belt's the answer to all things. It's actually the beginning. But to get a black belt, you set a goal. You work and you go through steps. You get your white belt, and you get your blue belt, then you get your purple belt. So it's the baby step concept, right? Getting to the black belt is not the goal. It's getting to the blue belt's the goal. then get into the purple belt school, then get and what happens is the same thing in business, you know, or in anything else. When you just set these steps and you follow through, eventually you get to your goal.
Yeah.
Then when you get to your black belt, you realize, oh, all that was just so I could learn that I knew nothing, and now I'm actually where I can begin learning. Up until then, you're just kind of just trying to make
Figuring
it
out,
happen, you know?
yeah.
But yeah, so I think that martial arts and the discipline you get from martial arts absolutely is why I'm very disciplined in business and very goal oriented. And I've always been very goal oriented. Whatever I've done, it's the beginning. I'm going to do it. Not I want to do it. Not I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to do it, and I'm just going to take my steps until I get to there. And I get there. Yeah. And then when I get there, I'm like, this is it. You know, so but for some people, but what's happened, like I told you, what's happened over the many years is all of those moments of achieving these things today circles around in a very beautiful company that we've built.
Were you always this relaxed, like people who know you from 30 and 20 years ago? Has your personality shifted, or have you always been as relaxed as you're coming across?
I'm relaxed. Oh, thank you. I'm glad. Relaxed. I've always been relaxed and confident, but I, you know, as a young, arrogant kid, and as I got older, you know, took my licks sometimes, you know, in business and in life, and learned humility and learned that you can't do anything by yourself. You know, you can be the general, but if you run into that battle with no one behind you but you as the general, you're not going to do very well. So yeah, so I think I just learned a lot, and a lot of it's humility, and a lot of it's knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not, and knowing how to find people that can fill those gaps, and allowing them to help you succeed, and as a group, making sure everybody benefits.
When did the JLE Cinema Group all kick off? I'm in the production game now, so this really interests me. You enter the world of production and film.
Well, you know, this actually started off in a company called John Lewis Entertainment Group in 2001 when I was in Vegas. So over 25, 30 years, I ran nightlife in Vegas. When I say nightlife, I mean hotels, marketing, entertainment, restaurants, this whole thing. And I was very successful in that. And during that time, part of my gig was booking celebrity talent and packaging it with big brands, whether it be Microsoft, whether it be Caesar's Palace, whatever it was, bringing these elements together to help give it that brand recognition. So I started off doing that for many, 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 many years. And then I ended up, one of the people that I worked with, her name was Melissa Hershenson, who's my agent today still as an actor and stuff. She said, you know, we've done a lot of events together with my clients. Have you ever thought about acting yourself? And I'm like, well, you know, I mean, I have, but I'm in Vegas doing this. And she says, well, let me send you on a couple auditions and see how you do. And I booked right away, which is very rare to start booking and book a feature right away. And she's like, you have a lot of technique with this. You have, and once again, I told you, I was in Vegas for so many years. I was successful at this world, doing great, no reason to leave. And man, I knew a new goal. Really? I can go out there and act now and produce. And so I packed it up, started over again, moved to California from Vegas, and went to some auditions, booked some stuff. And what would happen was I would sit at the table with the producers or directors as an actor, and by the time it was over, they'd be saying, "Do you want to produce with us?" And the reason was because they'd be wanting to get certain celebrities in their movies, and I'm like, "Oh, let me just call him right now. This is my buddy, you know." This is like, and they're like, "Oh my God, you know." I first started off like packaging talent with movies and becoming a producer this way. And then over the years, I learned how to be on the ground producer and produce films from beginning to end. And that was how I realized my niche, you know, was like, okay, everybody wants to be an actor. Everybody wants to be, you know, whatever they want to be at the time, many years ago. But I can bring something of value to the table, you know. And another thing I learned is when I sit across somebody, most people sit across someone saying, here's what I need. Here's what I need from you. Here's what I need from you. Can you help me? Can you? And the person over there is like, oh, here every day. And yeah, I'm going to meet this person because my friend asked me to do this favor for them. I sit down and I say, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? You know, like you're an agent now, you're a director now, and they look at me like they're thinking they're going to meet me, right? And then they open up and you say, you know, you know, I actually wanted to produce, or I wanted to do this, that, or the other, and I started becoming an agent, or a director, and I got stuck in this world. And I'm like, you know, I know a guy that would be great. Let me make a call, and I'll set you up. And then by the time that conversation's over, they say, how can I help you? How can I help you? And I go, well, you know, and then it ends up being symbiotic, and you realize the more you give, the more you get.
Oh yeah.
That's the key. You know, the more you give. If you come like, what can you do for me? How can you help me? You know, then that's when you kind of become just another one of those guys that kind of, maybe you make it, maybe you don't. But once you realize you're better off giving, and some people don't take advantage of it, that's fine. That's part of life, right? Usually the ones that do that aren't the ones that last. But the real people, they appreciate that. And I've made a career of asking, how can I help you? And it's always came back to helping me get where I want to get.
So true, John. I've noticed that in my life. The more I can give someone, it could be something as simple as a street cleaner or a beggar on the street. We don't see many beggars around Saudi these days. Street cleaners, they break my heart, especially, you know, July, August, when it's 50 degrees, 130 Fahrenheit. And I'm, you know, $5, $10, something good will happen to me at the end of that day.
Absolutely.
God would have done something, would have made like maybe a project I wanted to go through, or a gig that I wanted. He'll give it back to me in a different way.
100%.
The more you give, the more you...
Yeah, you hear people say, you know, like I've heard people, you know, when it comes to, say, a homeless person or something like this, where they're like, oh, I don't want to give money because they're just going to use it on this. I'm like, it's not your business. You know, just give, you know. And if that's what they need to get to their day, who's the judge, right? But it's not the point. You're not doing it because you want to be in charge of them. You're doing it because you can make a difference at that one moment, right?
Correct.
So I believe if you have $1, I'll give you 50 cents. Yeah. But usually you get $2 back. Now, that's not why you're doing it.
Yeah.
But it's just that I believe it's just a law. You know, you do positive things, you get positive back from things. So I just approach everything with that mentality that you're speaking about. Just
Karma.
yeah. You're not trying to achieve. You're just saying, you know, I can help you with this. Let me give you a hand with this. And that one little thing that day could have made their day or could change their life. You'll never know.
Yeah. And I think kindness is like one of the purest qualities anybody can have. Like I think that the world is in need of a bit more kindness.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
How do you stay motivated throughout all of this? Keeps you going. Besides coffee.
It's not even hard. By the way, this is a rare bottle of great water. It's not hard for me. It's hard for me not to be motivated. You know, people say, man, you're always working. It's not, you know, you've heard it a million times. You know, I've seen it on your show a million times. If you love what you do, right? Like, I find myself like, what can I do today? What can I do today? Not just because I need to be working to move towards my goal. I sincerely enjoy what I'm doing and developing and building things. I enjoy building things. I wouldn't say more than what you'll gain, but I would say the journey really is my motivation, which is why I tell you why have I done so many things? Because I've reached the goals. In everything that I've done, I've been a world champion fighter. I've owned my own shows and sold those shows. I've done things. So why did I move on to something different? Because the fun part for me was getting there. You know, building something from scratch, especially the things that you tell me that I can't do. Tell me that, I'm gone. Then
You're on it.
Okay, well, no, I really got to do it because, you know. So for me, it's not that hard to be motivated as long as I'm doing something that I really, really want to do, that I really enjoy doing, and it gets me and it keeps me happy. You know.
Does work feel like play?
It does, you know. I mean, of course you have ups and downs. You know, you have those moments like that are rough, but it's like fighting. Like you said, it's fighting. You know, you're getting knocked down and you just stay down, or do you get back up? You know, I get back up. You know, and that's what matters. You know, you can't really learn much to me from winning. I mean, you can have done things correctly to win. But the lessons come from losing.
From losing.
You know, what did I do wrong? What could I do better? How can I get back in tomorrow and work on this thing? And then you become better. If you just kind of get a bunch of little wins along the way, you kind of just become arrogant and you don't develop. You know, so I think the best entrepreneurs and the biggest people in the world that we both probably know, in our own worlds would tell you that they've lost more than they won, you know. But now we see them at the winning stage, and we just think this just happened. But, you know.
Yeah. And a question that a lot of people often think about is that they want to pick the brain of an entrepreneur or successful businessman today and what his days are like today and what he does so that I can be successful. But that's not going to help you. You want to know what he did in his darkest hour,
Exactly.
so he can get himself in the position that you see that
Right.
he's in today.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you think you're just going to mimic what someone did when they're at a successful point and you're asking them how they did it, you probably don't have it to get there in the first place. Because they thought they were going to be that when they started. Like, I don't start something off saying, well, I'm just going to try this and see if one day I become successful. There's not even a question in my mind. I'm going to get there. It's just, I just got to work and get there, you know, and hopefully it'll happen fast, which it never really does, but hopefully it will. But I'll continue to work and continue to work, and then you get there, you know. But people that are like, you know, I'm all for self-help books and all of those kinds of things, but I'm also a believer that, I don't want to say this in a negative way, if you spend too much time listening to self-help books or tapes in car, you got to find a different kind of motivation. Because if you need that to get you motivated to get there, then you may not have that thing that you need to have to be the boss of the corporation, you know. Now, if you're learning tricks from masters, that's different, right? But if you need to, like, I got to watch this so I can get motivated, you're missing it. You're missing it.
Yeah. I mean, it could act as a spark for someone who's maybe in a dark area, dark time.
Right. But at the end of the day, the great ones were on a mission. You couldn't stop them if you wanted to try. You know.
Are they is it nature, nurture? Are they born with it, or is it something that they pick up through everything that they've been through? You know, those that have it.
Yeah. I think you can be. I mean, some people can be born with it. We have virtuosos in, you know, piano, and, you know, amazing people that from a young age are just talented. But you have other people that, like, were pushed into something from their parent, like Tiger Woods and golf. Yeah. Right. Probably as a youth was like, I want to go play with my friends. No, you're going to go, you know. And there's a way to look at that. Like, that parents was really you know, not letting him live his young life, and there's truth to all of that, you know. Like, I don't want to overly push my son to do something, but at the same time, he wouldn't be Tiger Woods today probably if that hadn't happened. So it's like this, it's balance, you know. So I think you can learn if you start at a young age and you learn habits of success and how to be motivated, and it just becomes part of your nature is when you may not have just innately been born with it. But there are people that are just born like, you know, I mean, when I was in Hawaii dancing professionally, it was fun that I was dancing, and then I wanted to make money at it, and then I started doing that, like going around the islands, opening concerts with my big dance group. It was getting paid professionally and getting ripped off from our manager, but we were just getting exposure, you know, while he was getting checks. But we were in it, you know. And then when the opportunity came for me when I was 17 for a big audition for a show in Vegas, you know, I said, Mom, I'm gonna go, and she just supported me like she had her whole life. Put me on a plane by myself to California at 17 years old, and I just never looked back. You know?
Wow.
Like, so no one had to tell me, go try this. It was more like they said, you shouldn't do this. You gotta put all your eggs in one basket. And I'm like, of course I'm gonna go do this. This is what I've been doing all my time. What was I doing this for? And so I know I won't say again I'm going on a long conversation, but the point of it is that I think that you can be born with it, but you can also be taught it if you start at an early enough age and build the habits. Mm-hmm. You know.
Yeah, a bit of nurture, not just nature.
Yeah.
What's something that you'll never put up with?
Lazy people that just say what they want to do, or they talk a lot about these big dreams that they have, but then you never see them putting any effort towards it or any work towards it. You know, that kind of drives me crazy. I'm like, don't even tell me about it. You know, so I'm not crazy about that. I don't put up with people that talk about the things that they want to do, but don't put the time into it, or aren't willing to put work into it. And that's one of the things.
Yeah. It's fun to dream. I mean, a lot of people have all these crazy ideas, but when it comes to execution, very few follow.
And I just, that's another way to look at it from a more positive answer is people that actually have talent, that you see they actually can do it, but they just don't do the work.
That hurts.
And it's just, that's probably a better answer, is just seeing that, man, and like you said, you can't force them to do it, or if they don't have that part of it. So many people have talent in this world. So many people are good at things, but very few people have the business acumen and the talent and put those things together. And those are probably the ones that we all know about. They're successful.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, that's the magic.
Has anyone ever told you that you look like Jeff Bezos?
Yes, my son.
Should have opened with that one.
A long time ago.
Came in an hour and 20 minutes.
When I was coming up and I was working on making more money, he came up with this name. He called me Jeff Pesos. He was like a little kid, like 12. It was the best joke ever. I was like, I can't believe you thought of that. Jeff Pesos. Because if your viewers don't know pesos, and money-wise, but yeah, so I've heard that. But then what? I also Vin Diesel, Jason Statham. I guess just because I'm bald, But yes, I have heard this.
Yeah, no, you'd be an epic Jeff Bezos stunt double.
Maybe that's my next one.
Happier with age? Have you managed to find happiness as you've gotten through life?
Yeah, but more from just appreciating what you have, and not just thinking always when I was younger, it was just I couldn't see myself happy until I achieved it, And as you get older, you start to really appreciate what you actually have. Having a kid was everything for me. That was like, okay, it's not just about me anymore. Every decision that I make now is like, how's that going to benefit him when I'm gone? So I think for me, finding happiness now came from learning to appreciate what I already have. And even having gifts that I was able to be lucky enough to choose so many things. We won't even get into it, but I have albums out you could get on now. I write music, I performed in bands, I was a signed recording artist at one time. I danced professionally, I mixed martial arts, champion, owned my own shows, ran nightlife in Vegas, aerospace. To have this many opportunities and not appreciate the gifts that you're given to even let you have those opportunities is a waste. So now I just look back and go, man, I had a really interesting life so far, and it's not over yet. But so I would say I found happiness in what I've already achieved and having the ability and the expertise to continue to try to achieve more.
What did you enjoy the most from everything you've done? Like real pleasure.
I love
joy.
I love fighting, but not because I love fighting. Because I love the spotlight. I love to be the guy in the arena. I love to be the lead singer in the band. I love to be the dancer on the stage. I love to. So I find enjoyment. It's not so much. Maybe it is. I don't know, but an ego thing where I just want to be the guy. But I enjoy leading. I enjoy finding something and leading in it. So I think I just love creating things and spearheading it and being able to put something together that people think are impossible to do or think are very hard to do and make it happen.
Yeah. Entertainment as well on some level.
Yeah.
You enjoy entertaining people, I think.
I do. Yeah, I enjoy that. I enjoy entertaining people. I enjoy making movies. I write. I have 2 novels out. I love writing. I love, this is a way to look at it. Even music, it's all the same. I love having an idea, putting it on paper or putting it into action, and then seeing the result at the end and saying, I made this.
Fruition.
I made this. It's like, whether you see it or you don't see it, doesn't matter. I made this, and it's something I can put my song into my car, or someone can go in there and go, hey, I heard your song. So yeah, I like just creating, man. I love creating things.
It's amazing to see something from idea to product.
Finishing like what you're doing here, it's just to have this idea, I'm going to do this, and now see where you're going, and you're doing so great, and I bet you I'll be calling you in a couple of years, you're trying to get back on your show, you're going to be like, I don't know, John, I'm too busy.
Hell no. Busy, I'll come to you. We shoot in Vegas or in LA next time.
Oh gosh.
It's amazing how it goes from Instagram to a phone call, and then here's the guy, John in this case, 124th guest, and you're giving birth to, we're creating something that could have easily have never have happened. It
Yes.
started from something that was a text
Yeah.
to a feature film. I mean, this will probably go an hour and a half or so.
Yeah.
Then you have people from all over the world who watch it. Content creation is something special.
Yeah, yeah. Think about, I mean, the aerospace industry, to think about it is like, I'm gonna start an aerospace company. You're gonna what, you know? Years later, not that many years later, I mean, I have contracts and partnerships with the biggest space agencies in the world. From
That's awesome,
everyone
man.
you can think of that matters, that take me very seriously, and they're partners in different parts that I do. All the things that I have now are just ideas. I just try to respect my NDAs, but I have contracts with many different major groups to do what I'm saying to make it real. It's just neat to be able to have an idea like that, you know. And it's really funny because this situation happened. You know, you ask about how things go from one to the next. I was doing a movie. I was putting it together. It didn't happen, but I was putting it together, called Helios, and it was about it's kind of like Space Cowboys, like one of those things you go save the world from this solar flare that's going to hit the Earth. And I was trying to get product placement. So I started reaching out to all these different space companies and started making great relationships with them, from NASA to everybody, and got them involved in the show, Jeff Bezos' company, Blue Origin, and started building all these great relationships. So then an individual, I'll leave unnamed, said, hey, you know, I have this thing I want to do, this boxing thing in space. And I was like, boxing in space? You can't do boxing in space. He was a producer, right? And I was like, so the people that I were working with at the time said, you got to meet John. He's like our space guy. I was right, but I was a space guy. So he brought him to meet me, and when he started talking about it, I'm like, he didn't realize my history of fighting, my background, and it was about fighting at the time. He's like, and when he learned that, he's like, wait a minute, you're a fighter? How many film producers that fighting backgrounds to my pedigree that also know how to that know the space, you know? And I ended up doing this thing, and then I just took it over. He ended up falling out of the project, but I just said, this is the thing, you know. I've been offered many times to be presidents of different MMA federations and companies, but in my mind, like, the UFC is the UFC. They're dominative, unless I want to be a feeder show or something, which is zero interest to me. You know, I want to do things on a higher level. But when this idea came, and then my mind started playing with it and developing it, I said, this is unique. This is something special. Mixed martial arts and zero gravity. That's something unique. And then I just built from there. I built this big machine over the years to where it is now. But once again, it's just one thing led to the next thing. If I hadn't been doing that one movie where I met all those space companies, then I wouldn't have been the guy who does space for that situation. So everything made sense from beginning to end. It's just how life works sometimes.
Perfect storm.
Yeah, it's just how life works.
Would you have done anything differently? In other words, any regrets?
Of course. I mean, there's always regrets, right? I mean,
A few street fights?
huh?
A few street fights?
Those are great. I love those. Those are good. Those are my highlights. those are the good stories. You know, I don't say I regret in a way like I look back on things and regret, because I'm a true believer that every minute, from every step, from this second to me walking out of this door, there's a choice, at least two, right? You go this way, I can go that way. Yeah, I can do this or I can do that. So once I make that choice, I don't look back, because it's easy to go, this would have happened, but you have no idea what would have happened. So there's no point to even do that. I just take it and I go forward with it. There are things that I had done in my past, positive things, but decisions I made. I'll give you one that I haven't told anybody yet. Yeah, I'm going to do it. During the time of the Fertittas, this is an exclusive, by the way, the Fertittas and Dana White, before the UFC was purchased. I had my own show called the WFA I was developing, which was the World Fighting Alliance, because I realized at the time that the UFC, which wasn't Dana, it was pre, was just not production value wasn't there. There were great fights, but it was very boring. And I was also into nightlife and entertainment, so I was very hip to DJs and you know, all this cool lights and all this different stuff that was happening. And UFC didn't have it at the time. So I was developing the show, and I had the slogan was "Where the Fight Club meets the nightclub." And I would bring in lasers. I had like Ice-T opening the concert performing. I had an intermission with professional breakdancers and all this, which at the time was no one was doing, because I saw the WWE or WWF then.
FF, yeah.
And this, and I said, if I can merge these two things. So I created the show. I had it 18 years and older, which was interesting because it brought women to the sport, which didn't care about it, because it was like a night out. They dressed great and everybody would be looking good, and I have VIP tables. I did it like I would do a big high-end nightclub, but with great fights. So I had this great idea, right? That was the idea. Before that show first happened, one of the brothers of the two Fertitta brothers that purchased the UFC, Frank, said, "Hey John, I know you're trying to do this show. I want to partner with you. I'll give you X amount of dollars. You and me will be partners on this show, and we'll build your show." Lorenzo was on the athletic commission at the time, the boxing commission. So there was no purchasing of the UFC. I had another partner who I had thought of this idea with. So I said, listen, it's great. Of course, to have, you know, backing of you guys, my friends for the years. He said, no, I only want to do it with you. It's just be you and me. And I said, man, you know, I can't do that. It's you. It's got to be you and me and him. He goes, it's got to be you and me or nobody. And out of loyalty, I said, then I can't do it, right? Which at the time, Dana was boxing. He was on the commission. It would have been the show that all of that money would have went into that made the UFC what it is today, because that would have been the show. Why would they have done another show?
True.
If his brother was doing this show?
Absolutely.
Right? But I was loyal, and I wanted to do, which is important to me, and I passed on that. I ended up doing the show myself, and they bought it from me, by the way. But that's another story. But I did learn, though. The lesson I learned is I probably should have said yes. But when I would have been successful, and my friend might have been upset, 4 years later I would have wrote him a massive check and said, listen, if we stuck to what we were doing, no one was going to get anything accomplished. So I always had good intentions. Thank you. You know, and then he probably would have been very happy. But at least I could look back on it and say I had integrity to that stage. Shortly after that is when that UFC was purchased, and that was the direction. So that's the one thing I can say. Once again, you know how the fork would have went, but I can say that if the same brothers that bought my show at the time, before the UFC was purchased, that probably would have been the focus. And so that's the one thing I could look back on.
It's crazy.
It's the first time I ever told that story, by the way, in all of these years.
This is the first time you say it?
I ever told the story. Yeah.
Wow, we're still going to micro segment this on YouTube. It's crazy how one made decision or one not made decision can change the course of history in such a big way.
They really
UFC fate altering.
Yes. For so many people. I mean, and like for Dana to just, you know, have that moment and see that the vulnerability of the UFC and say, hey, I think we should buy this, which is what he did. And then look where it went, you know. And like I said, they put in so much money, and it was just. And someone else could have bought it for $2 million, but not had they had the pocketbook to play the game, and it would have went nowhere, you know. But they had the money to play the game, they had the balls to play the game, and the stars aligned. And then today there's a huge industry that employs a lot of people and a new whole fun sport. So things happen, you know. Things happen that just change.
Fascinates me. Fascinates me.
It's amazing.
I did not expect. When the first time I heard of it, I think I was in school in Boston, 05, 04. I did not expect this many people to tune into bare knuckle fighting. I guess at the time it was known as that.
Right.
But it dwarfed.
Yeah.
Boxing is now back, and I think a big reason for that is because of Turki al-Sheikh and Riyadh season. Anyone who knows anything about boxing will not disagree.
Yeah.
But before Riyadh season and Turki al-Sheikh came into the boxing world, it dwarfed the sport. Like nobody was talking about boxing anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's on the level of some of the sports that are played in the US, the top 5 sports.
It is. You know, boxing is interesting now. Controversial conversation, but I you know, we represent a lot of different IPs for my other company, JLE Cinema Group. One of our clients is Monster Inoue. He's a great fighter, pound for pound, the best. We handle him in certain parts of his business. And he's a brilliant fighter. A lot of those smaller fighters are still brilliant. In my personal opinion, I'm not blown away with the heavyweight division across the board. I think there's a lot of decent talent there. There's some tough guys there. But I just don't see the days of Prime, Tyson, Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, Riddick Bowe. These guys at these times were incredibly savages now, and I don't think it's the same now. It's hard to tell because everything's relative. If you put two, I'm not saying they are, but put two mediocre fighters together, then they're going to both look good, and one's going to be a little better. But if you put that same guy against this guy, all of a sudden, so when you have, I think the pool now doesn't blow me away, to be honest with you. I think there's some tough guys right now, but I don't think any of them right now could have played at that time with the guys Holyfield and Lennox and those guys.
That was the golden era.
That's my true honor. Yeah, true. And it's not like, and you usually think different, right? Because when you look at boxing from the old days, you say, obviously boxing's improved from the days of this, but there was this one era, right, of those days when Prime Tyson era, I call it, but not only him, that whole circle where the fights were really savage, these savage fighters.
95, 97.
Now I'm like,
The top five in the 80s and 90s take out the top five in 2010 and 2020.
I believe it 100%.
Any day of the week. It's 5-0.
Yeah, and then people now will fight against you because they're probably young then.
Yeah.
They don't realize it, but if you were around then, there's a difference.
Yeah. I like AJ.
Yeah.
I like him very much.
Yeah.
And I was shocked with what happened with Daniel Dubois.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, maybe they didn't look into the scouting report as much as they should have, but that guy can throw.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying these guys can't fight. Of course they can, and they're going to probably hate me when they hear this, which I don't really care. But truth of the matter is, I just, looking at the sport, being a fighter my entire life, really understanding fighting, I see a lot of social media stars, they can fight pretty well.
Yeah.
As opposed to those days, people, they would eat you alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I barely remember watching Tyson in the mid-90s. I watch it now on YouTube, and just the way he moves. Yeah. I mean, the way he moves today. Yeah. Wasn't he gonna fight one of the?
He's gonna fight Jake Paul.
Jake Paul, yeah.
I mean, even the fact that we even are saying, I don't know who's gonna win. This says a lot, because he's a lot older than Tyson. I knew Tyson from back in the Vegas days. He is, even now you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to fight Tyson.
Savage.
We'll see what happens, and I wish the best. They both have a great fight and both make a lot of money. But even now you can look at Tyson and take that seriously. Yeah. And that's how good he was then, that even now we still remember that. Yeah. That just says a lot right there.
Iron Mike. I don't think we'll ever see anyone like him again.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
He was just in a league of his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up with this one, John. A bit of a hypothetical question. You're asked to host a dinner party, and you're allowed to invite 3 guests from throughout history, dead or alive. And I'm very interested in hearing your answer to this. 3 guests from throughout history, dead or alive. Who are those 3 guests? And what are we having to eat?
Well, I would for sure say Elon Musk, because he's just such a visionary and such a perfect example of the entrepreneur that things outside of the box across the board. So I definitely see that would be someone I just love to just sit and chat with all day long. Another one in the music industry would have been Prince. And I like Prince for obvious reasons, besides him being an incredible artist. Is just, once again, this does what he wants to do. He writes what he wants to write. Besides being able to play every possible instrument there is, just being so creative, a wise soul, I would think.
He's up there in terms of GOAT status with Michael Jackson. If Michael's 1, Prince is 2.
Yeah, and I love Michael too. I think of Prince as being, I loved him equally, actually, especially during that genre. But at the time, I see Prince is less of a product, although Michael was the man. Pop was the right name for him. Prince is just like, I don't care if you like it, my music. If you don't like my music, I see more that.
Yeah.
Where I think Michael was, with Punji Jones, they were very, this is a hit, this is a hit, this is a hit.
Yeah.
So I like the freedom of Prince's true control of his business, of his career.
Yeah.
And then maybe a warrior from the past like Napoleon, someone who just incredibly ambitious, very intelligent strategically, because I think a big part of what I do in my life for everything that I'm doing is I look at it like strategically, in that same kind of pattern. So those would be three amazing people to have at the table. I think to be a fly on the wall during that conversation was pretty crazy.
Yes, a historic one. What's cool about it is that they all come from totally different walks of life.
Right.
And you can just imagine the conversation.
Yeah, and they all have that same gift, but in their own way. Which you can see how they all compare, yet they're totally different.
Yeah. They'll have more in common than you might think.
I think so too.
What about meals? Say if it was your last meal on Earth, and this was the last dinner you attended, is there a specific food that you'd want to make sure you have for your last meal?
I like Korean barbecue. Have you had that? Like where you cook your own.
I love it.
I'm a big Korean barbecue fan. I like a lot of different things. But Korean barbecue's fun. Just different meats being thrown in there, cooking them yourself, and all the
There's a
different
couple
sides.
good ones here, by the way.
Oh, really? Yeah, I haven't had one here yet. Yeah, so I love Korean barbecue. So I can't say that's the ultimate meal for all, but the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was great feast of just different types of meats. and Korean barbecue would be wonderful.
How are you with fried food? Do you go there from time to time?
Yeah. I have a balanced lifestyle food-wise. Like I don't think I do anything in extreme in either direction. I have moderation. Like, and if I feel like I went a little heavy on this, then I'll go a little light on this for a little bit. So yeah, I do. So
you'll have In-N-Out from time to time?
Absolutely, and that's great. Yeah.
It's a really good burger place I want to tell you about in Jeddah.
Oh yeah, I love burgers. I'm a big burger fan.
This place,
good quality meats.
Good quality meat. Yeah. This place called Section B, they import from New Zealand.
Oh yeah.
And when I see Saudi startups putting together a burger product that is up there with some of the best gourmet burgers in the US, whether it's Apple Pan or some of those places in the LA area, I was like, wow, these Saudis are stepping up.
Oh, it is great food here. I love the food here. Yeah.
Well, if you have time in Jeddah, I'd love to take you to it. Show you how good we are, not just in the world of podcasting, but also as burger making.
Dude, and I want to be clear. This is not me just pumping you up. This is the truth. A lot of the time when I get offers to be on interviews or podcasts these days, I just pass on them because they're usually the same questions over and over again, and I get tired of answering them, and I'm just focused on doing my thing, But I've been a fan of your show.
Thank you.
For quite a while. I think you are very unique in your delivery and questions that you ask, and you make people feel very comfortable. So it was an honor to get out here to sit with you. It was a very important part of the goals that I wanted to have, is to sit and have a conversation with you and get to know you. So thank you very much for having me.
John, thank you so much. I mean, you could go on any podcast you want, and the fact that you gave me some of your time and you're saying these things about me, I'll never forget this, honestly. It is the utmost validation, so thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for the stories, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was great. And we were speaking actually before we started rolling. I said maybe I've found a bit of success in this world of journalism because I don't come from a journalism background.
Yeah.
So it's just literally, us having coffee and having a conversation with no agendas tied to it whatsoever.
Yeah, we have a great energy, so it makes it very easy to talk to, and you think outside of the box with the questions, so it makes it challenging.
Amazing. Well, I hope those who know you got to see a different side of you, and those who don't know you got a chance to see who you really are. Enjoy the rest of your time in Saudi. You've been coming back and forth a lot, yeah?
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, we're looking for offices here right now. I plan to open an office in Riyadh very soon, and it's not, like I say, I'm not an American looking to come out here and find someone that wants to give me money to take home. I really want to come out here and set up shop and build something great that I think I could offer to Saudi. And we haven't even talked about all of the things that are available. So yeah, you're going to see me out here a lot, and hopefully we can do some big things.
Keep in touch, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you.